Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Opportunity. Today I am talking to Alex Drew, who's the founder of Odys.global, Odys.global, which is a marketplace that helps people buy premium and expired domains that can really juice up your SEO. Or if you are just a domain investor in general, they will go and find you a really cool, say, two-word brand name. I've been kind of a secret fan of ODYS for a while, and I'm happy that we're actually going to be working on a co-marketing relationship with between EF and ODYS. So that's going to be really exciting. Keep an eye out for that. But if you are just curious on how you can sometimes dramatically shortcut your SEO success and do it right with a powerful domain, then this is the episode for you. So with that said, I'll get out of your way and we can go ahead and jump on the other side. See you there. All right, I am here with Alex Drew, one of the founders of ODYS, Odious.global, the Odyssey, if you will. Alex, I'm excited for you to be on here. I'm actually a secret fan of your company. I've been watching it for a while, so it's cool to finally do this. My audience that isn't familiar with you and ODYS, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are in the world right now.
Yeah, so we're Estonian based, but we have a couple offices around the world. One of the first offices that we've started like 10 years ago is in India. Like that's the original Odys team, so to speak. Then we have one more office. As of recently, we had one in Romania, now we have one in Moldova. And we also have partners and freelancers all over the world. For instance, our head of domain acquisitions is in Vienna, in Austria. And, generally, we're pretty global. So therefore, the Odys global brand to begin with.
Yeah, makes sense. And I just found out when we were talking a little bit before recording, the ODYS stands for Our Domains Your SEO, which I love. I think that's cool. And I like the Odyssey thing that you're positioning. We were talking a bit offline how Craig Campbell's ruined your entire brand positioning. So I'm glad we got Craig in there. So, Craig, if you're listening, make sure you share this podcast as a repentance to Alex. But talk to me about what ODOIS does. So it's an expired domain marketplace. Give me the 30-second sales pitch on what this marketplace is for and who it is for.
When it comes to aftermarket domain names, the internet is a mess. You really don't know what you're buying. So our angle to domains would be, due diligence. For instance, we've taken all the inventory that all our competitors combined have, and only 0.04% pass our due diligence. Like, we don't accept trademarks, we don't accept historical spam, link spam, anything that would make a domain risky for investment, taking into account that it's had like some previous life. So we've put
Hmm.
that into the marketplace and we curate those domains. Initially was our inventory, now we're accepting third-party inventory, meaning if you have a domain, we can perform our due diligence magic on it, and if it passes, it will go to the marketplace and you can have a liquid inventory. Basically, you can have a liquid portfolio that you can sell on our marketplace as well.
Yeah, I've looked at expired domains before. Like over my career, I've looked at many different places that have like, quote unquote marketplaces. Usually it's like a really shitty spreadsheet and it's like complicated to use. I got to give you a little hats off. Like your UX design has really made the process or like how you guys at least show the domains and show the data is like way better than like any other marketplace I've been to when it comes to expired domains. So hats off to you and your team on that front. Talk to me about what makes a good domain. Like why should someone want to buy an expired domain?
First of all, not all domains that we sell and are aftermarket and have historical records and have been in the aftermarket for a while, not all of them are expired. Like, the
Mm,
only a portion of it expire. For instance, let's say you have a domain that you registered like 10 years ago and you had your podcast on it. It was maybe your personal brand or some sort of, side hustle project. And maybe even got some great links, some mention, but you gave up on it. But it never expired. But it's an age domain because it's been there for a while. So now you interview me, we kind of connect and you say, hey, Alex, can I list this in your marketplace? And it passes the due diligence. Now we're dealing with a domain that never expired. So the expiration status of domain is sort of like just we interpret it as one of the sources for the domain, not necessarily the only source of domain. You may have websites that have been live, never expired, but they make great domains and now maybe no longer need the site, but you just want to liquidate, you just want to cash out the domain, so to speak. A great
that's a
domain.
great point. Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah. Just to wrap up the question, so a great name for me is, first of all, a short, pronounceable, brandable name that you can use for any project you have in mind. The second one is clean historical records. Like, even though SEO is not your thing, you don't want to be exposed, to trademark, historical, penalties, all sorts of hacking, malware, anything bad that can happen to a main entity or website entity online. So we kind of take care of that by, through our due diligence. And obviously, the SEO value, like, if you have to choose in between a new domain that has a relatively good name and an age domain that has a relatively good name or a great name, and also all the SEO value, also called the link juice that it gets, well, that can be a competitive advantage. Sometimes it just helps, especially content marketers, shift their focus away from doing their on page and content and links to just content planning, and on page. So for the first 6 months to a year, you can completely forget about building links when picking a good domain.
Yeah, those are all great points. I think you talking about the difference between expired and like no, this never expired is also a good point.
Yeah.
Like even me, when I think about buying aged domains, I always think in like the expired category. But let's stay on that real second. So for domains that don't expire, how do you get hold of them? Like that example you were just talking about with me having this, personal website that maybe I gave up that was like 10 years old. Are you just reaching out to that site owner like, hey, look, I want to buy this? Is that kind of how the process is going for you?
Outreaching is a hell of a process. We've tried that to
I bet.
source, domains for websites, and it didn't work. Like, I'll be completely honest with you, it didn't work. Initially, our main source of domains was, auctions, which obviously, make a big portion, or used to make a big portion of our inventory. So we were the only inventors. Then, in time, as we started to get, a network of people that were interested, we tapped into their own inventory. So I assume that you have an account, a register account somewhere. I assume that you have at least a dozen domains there. And I also can assume that some of those may be eligible, for what we're building for the type of marketplace. So now, as we used to have, like, I have around 700 age domain enthusiasts in my Skype only. Then I have my network, my LinkedIn, my Facebook, and forums, all these private communities. So at some point when we onboarded all these people into Odys, ODYS, shout out to Craig Campbell once again, so he can share this podcast.
The master ruining brand positioning.
Yeah,
Yes.
we, 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 we ended up having access to a lot of inventory, some of which is not expired, some of which belongs to our members, and some of which is not available anywhere else. For instance, who would have access to your domains unless you've listed them for sale somewhere? So no one.
Mhm.
And but being a part of the network, having access to the marketplace, now we can have access to to those domains as well. And obviously that makes a relatively big portion, a chunk of the inventory in our marketplace, around 20%, I'll say. So domains belonging to our members. And that is a source of domains that it's almost impossible to, source from, like, an available source like GoDaddy auctions or any other, expiring domain service out there that's monetizing their inventory.
That makes sense. The network effect, like it really gives you a very solid grip on the private market. And there's no one who has more domains than internet marketers. Like I still own
Yeah.
like a few old websites, just like the domains from way, way, way back in the day. But my very first affiliate site would never have worked because it was Dungeons and Dragons books.com, a lawsuit waiting to happen. So, when I was like first playing around like how to build out a website way back in the day. But that's awesome. I like that network effect. It does give you like a much more, how do you say, fresh inventory that no one else has, which I think is a nice moat that ODYS has built. In terms of different types of domains, what's out there? So we've talked about expired domains, but are there other categories that people should be aware of here when it comes to buying aged domains, like TLDs, anything like that?
Yeah, look, hopefully by the end of the month, in about a week or two, we're launching the new marketplace. We've been building it for the past year. And with the new concept, we're also adding, not necessarily, we used to call them premium age domains. Now we're calling them premium and age domains. Why? Because sometimes you may have a great idea and you may be looking for a perfect domain which has passed the entire due diligence process, but it's not necessarily like packed with SEO value. It means it's just a great name. So
Yeah.
we're also adding, these great names. Sometimes, content marketers, affiliate marketers, or even companies that want to rebrand, ideally they'd seek SEO value, but if they can really find a great name, so we're tapping into those type of domains that make them brandable and premium, but not necessarily packed with SEO value. A third type of domain is the so-called startup sites. So they are a domain entity, but whenever they get listed for review, so we kind of open up in the browser, and if there is a website attached to it, it might be a failed affiliate project or a failed startup idea that you had, but we still insist that the sellers leave the website on, because for me it might be failed, or for you, but I might have some idea for that website. I may use the
Yeah.
content, I may use the structure. It's just valuable to me, so we insist that they leave the websites on. So domains with websites, or startup websites as we call them, but they're tied to the domains as an entity, is another type of domains that we're planning to add. And we, in fact, we have around dozen websites, but they don't make any money. They're not businesses. They're just domains with the website as an asset that comes with it. It's like buying a flat that has some furniture. You might not need it, you may throw it away, but some may need the sofa, so they will keep it around.
Right. That makes sense. I like that too because most of my SEO friends, and maybe you can, if you see something different, I would love to have your opinion on this. But a lot of my SEO friends that do buy these age domains, one of the first things they do, I mean, usually they don't have a website attached to it. So the first thing they'll do is to go to something like archive.org or the Wayback Machine and see what was there. And they'll usually recreate that content within reason and then like let it index. And only after that, do they really start like the redirecting madness or adding new content, all that kind of stuff? Is that kind of what you're seeing as well with your customers that are buying these domains?
We do, in fact, we do not recommend, rebuilding or resurrecting. We used to call this the resurrection method, when they would resurrect the former website.
Really?
We do not recommend it. That's because you're buying the domain. The former owner of the website might not need the domain. They may have gone out of business. They may have bankrupted, some life-changing events. They may simply decided to sell it. Unless they provide the content, you do not own the content. So it's not your content. So it's a little bit gray hat, I'd say, stealing or using that content
I
to.
should say recreate. They're not copy and pasting. At least my
Yeah.
friends are not doing the pure black hat stuff,
And
but
they are,
they
they are, they're not
recreate it.
telling you. They are.
That's a good point. They don't want to tell Greg over here. But an example would be like if I bought I don't know, a hydroponics website and they had a bunch of content about raising tomatoes, I would try to recreate an article on raising tomatoes, ideally better than what they had before, right? Like typical SEO, like you look at the SERPs and you're trying to make it the best content in the SERPs. But that seems to be the common strategy that my friends at least do. But you're saying that's actually not a good play.
Rebuilding with the former topic in mind is something that, kind of contributes to continuity in terms of the topic. So that
Mm.
helps. But the problem is, some people are not aware, and they think if I copy the former website with its entire gibberish, 2005 HTML code, that will somehow help. It doesn't help. Like
Yeah,
Google understands
yeah, definitely
code and
not.
HTML.
Yeah.
It doesn't help. So what helps is publishing. Let's say you're not only publishing content, you understand topic clusters, and you understand content planning, and you know how to create this topical authority on your website. So let's assume the former website was related to, let's say, potash. We recently sold a potash related. That's a mineral that's used in gardening, for instance. And now they
Mhm.
bought a potash domain, but when doing your topic cluster, you actually discover that you need content on gardening. Now they wanted to build a gardening website, and you obviously can't repurpose straight to gardening. You need some kind of potash content. So the first topic clustering would contain supporting articles that talk about how potash is used in gardening, all sorts of potash related content. And then as you start adding and touching the subject of gardening, then you can slowly expand into other topic clusters that talk about gardening and end up reviewing, I don't know, some gardening tools, for instance. But that continuity has to be done. And that's the benefit of studying what historically was on the domain and transitioning it. That's the benefit of rebuilding the former website, or at least getting inspired in terms of the content from the former website. Simply copy pasting the HTML with all the non optimized content that was on the site will bring zero benefits, basically.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's how I would outline a topic cluster. Like you have kind of like bridge articles that go in between the two silos or topic maps, right? So there's some logic to like how did you start talking about gardening from potash? That all makes sense to me. In terms of the different use cases when it comes to premium domains, we kind of already mentioned at least two of them. There's, the head start with SEO and depending on the SEO value of the domain, but then there's also the brandability just buying a really cool sounding domain, right? Is there anything else here, like other use cases that your customers have used to like get an ROI on these domains that they're buying from you?
Yeah, obviously, 301 redirects. huge. But everyone's doing the lazy way, I'd say. I'm not saying they're doing it wrong
The
or
black hat
falling for
copy
three
and
oh
paste
one.
way.
Yeah, but the thing is, they work, and in SEO terms, they move the needle. But there's something really specific about 301 redirects, and something that I try to educate our members on, specifically the fact that you have to use and to perceive 301 redirects as you'd perceive a pay-per-click campaign, or as you'd perceive a branding or a marketing campaign, or as you buy any other advertising. It's just a means of growth. So, for instance, we sold a pillows domain to a pillows review site, and the match was so good that they started to get extra sales, a boost in sales actually from the redirect before it moved the needle in terms of like rankings. And what they happened is because they redirected like a former pillows brand which was no longer in business, it operated a generic name that's not a trademark. They redirected it to an acquisition page where they announced the acquisition, why it's strategically important to them, and then that made a lot of sense. Now, doing the acquisition page, transitioning content, redirecting on a one-to-one page level, assuring 100% relevancy so it doesn't confuse the users as well as the Google bot, is extra work. Now, SEOs are generally lazy, so they
Yes.
do also. They would take, for instance, maybe it wouldn't have been a pillow site. Let's say it was like a slip related site, and they would redirect all the anchor text and links to the homepage. Now that confuses search engines and Google, and that might not be as well the best experience for users. So instead of being lazy, perceive 301 redirects as the growth method and just then point them to pages, to actual landing pages that explain what you're doing there. So if you're pointing it to a landing page that's clearly explaining what you're doing there, and some visitors who got lost by clicking through a link reach and understand what was the purpose and what's with the landing page they landed on, guess what? Google won't have a problem understanding what you're doing there. So in
Right.
the real world, 301 redirects happen when businesses buy each other, when mergers happen, when acquisitions happen. And this is what they do in most of the cases. They even have like a press release where they advertise, the landing page and talk about. So do it or the right way. Do it like it happens in the real business world. Then it will be like a growth tactic for a business, not just as merely an SEO trick, to boost DR and backlink popularity.
I often joke that my SEO friends are amazing at getting you ranked on Google, but they often lack actual marketing skills because the SEO traffic when it comes in, it converts so high. Like a lot of times, you don't even really need to know like how the rest of marketing works, depending on your goals, right? And then to get distracted, go build another website. But I'm glad you said that because I agree. That's the way I've often talked about these. Like doing a 301 should be considered kind of similar to two companies merging, and I feel like
Yeah.
that's the way Google views it too. And that's why they don't punish this because it happens all the time. Like we have a marketplace where it's happening all the time, right? That's cool to hear. I imagine this would work. It was just something getting my brain rolling here. If you have like a big authority site, like big authority affiliate website, say it's that gardening website, and you want to get into Potash, but you don't have those links or like that domain yet, you go to Odys, buy that domain, rebuild like in the white hat way, not the lazy copy and paste way, the white hat
Yeah.
way, rebuild all those, then 301 them to your authority site, and you just basically at the end of the day you're buying expired domains for each new topic cluster you're starting to individually 301 into those topic clusters to get them a head start. Is that like a more advanced strategy? Have you seen anyone do that?
We do that, and shortly we'll be providing that as a service as well. That's
Oh,
because there's
really?
huge, yeah, there's huge demand. So the first one is M&A, so merger and acquisition 301 redirect method,
Hmm.
and the second one is topic cluster 301 redirect method. And let's say you have a gardening website, and you've been planning to expand into potash and talk about potash. That would most likely be a category where you structure your topical cluster within your map and plan content accordingly. Now, you don't want just to publish potash related content. Instead, you could go to Odys, for instance, and you'd search for a potash domain. Maybe you're just accidentally spot on. And then kind of this idea sparks, well, what if I use this to actually enter potash as content, as a new like topic cluster for content, but do it via the H domain way? And you buy the domain, and you do your research, and you build a potash topic cluster on the domain. Now, you leave it there for a couple of weeks, you let it indexed. If you have enough supporting articles to cover potash as a topic, you will gain rankings. Now, this entity, not just the H domain, but the H domain plus a well structured topical cluster on the topic of the former domain, you end up redirecting. But not just redirecting, you actually migrate the content. You keep the same URL structure to your gardening.com/potash, and then you engage the redirect. So this is called the topic cluster 301 redirect. And in fact, we've started doing this after notice like it was really, really visible that Google prefers content mergers and it rewards content mergers much more than it was like a plain 301 redirect done at the
Interesting.
registrar level. So you would migrate the entire content just like you'd merge two sites. But imagine like the first option is to buy an existing potash site and the second one is to build one. But building one is not necessarily that difficult. All you need to do is just, hire someone who knows how to build clusters, and you upload the content like MVP site, let it index, let it pick some rankings, and then merge it with your main one. And now you're not only adding new Potash related content to your main site, it comes with all the link juice that the original domain has. And it's legit. I mean, everything is spot on, so to speak. Like there is really no difference than going to the SERPs and outreaching a Potash existing website and making an offer and buying it and merging. Like really no difference.
Right, right. That's interesting. So have you found it's beneficial even on like a brand new domain that might be the little Potash satellite site and like building that content and then going merging that into your main site, even though that original the Potash site might not have any like initial SEO value other than just being indexed?
Yeah, obviously, like there would be only one case when you don't actually like the brand of the age domain or the name. There might be something funky about it or the way it sounds. It might not pass the radio test, so you don't necessarily want to build a brand on it. So you can register a brand new domain with a name that you actually like and just use this strategy to launch the site on the age domain first that's relevant, and then migrate the entire thing.
But
Like
let's talk
sort of
about
like
that.
rebrand.
Yes, I'm curious on this migration process. So, like, would it be you have two articles about the same thing, one for each site, and then exact same URL slugs, all that kind of stuff? And when it comes to actually like merging the content over, like you mentioned something more than just a 301. So, what's that whole process look like? Like, what does it actually take to transfer the content over?
Yeah, that's a good question. Imagine like Empire Flippers has a blog, right?
Mhm.
And imagine you start talking after this, podcast, you think, well, let's start publishing content on age domains. Now imagine there is an age domain blog out there. So you don't start from scratch, but you reach out to, agedomainblog.com and say, hey, John, we'd like to buy your site. And John has excellent content. And you simply take that content and migrate it to your, Empire Flipper /blog/age content category. So now you've moved the entire content. You've simply migrated it. And then when done, you simply engage the 301 redirect, which tells the content has permanently moved, both through visitors. Maybe he had like traffic, visitors, maybe he had an audience. But this is also like instructions for the search bots. They're now looking for that old content, and the search bots now read 301 redirect, the content permanently moved, the difference between aged and expired domains. Maybe he has like this article. So now it permanently moved to empireflippers.com/blog/age domain, that article. So that's the process. You migrate. You don't like merging means migrating the content, like moving the content, and but keeping the same URL slug. So let's say the former website was agedomainblog.com/ the difference between expired domains and age domains. And now it went to empireflippers.com/blog/age domain, the difference between expired domains and age domains.
That makes sense. So cool. That's awesome. I really like that strategy. I could see you being able to blow up a website relatively quickly as long as the domains that you're buying have good, SEO profile, which that's something I want to get into actually. So with ODYS, you mentioned you guys reject everything except for like 0.2% of the
Four,
domains you get, right?
0.04%. Yeah.
Oh, it's even worse. Okay, cool.
Even worse
So
now.
I imagine you're a man that has a connoisseur style taste when it comes to the domain stats. So let's get into that a bit. What characteristics should someone be looking for in a domain? Like, what are you looking for before you'll buy one to put it up on ODYS?
So if you end up submitting one of your old domains, most likely it will be rejected unless it has a cool name, like let's say, mywebsite.com, unless it has, none of the funky stuff that we've mentioned, historically, penalties and abuse and all that, link spam, for instance. And it also, for it to make a great age domain within our marketplace and to get listed, it has to have a considerable amount of high authority links of links, organic links. These shouldn't be like SEO links, or like you check Ahrefs and you clearly see that those links have been part of an outreach campaign, like guest posts, even worse, like PBNs. Like, we don't accept those. We want the link
Only,
profile.
SAPE links only.
Yeah, we want the link profile to be the result of some good marketing, the good marketing way.
Yeah.
And
I
that's what
always
we're
tell
looking
people, like, we
for.
do guest posts, but I tell my team, like, the backlink is really like a side effect of what we're really trying to do. Like, it's great, we'll take it for sure. And like, let's point that juice towards like a target. But what we're really trying to do is get that audience ingratiated with us. And hopefully we could come back to that same entity, that whether it's, like you guys, for example, we're working on some content together right now. But like the point of it is to get more market share from that person's audience. So like doing just like a one and done guest post, like, well, that's cool. It doesn't really move the needle as much for us. Like, we're already like a pretty powerful domain, so we can write about almost anything and just
Yep,
start ranking for it, right? So the link is like
yep,
lower priority for us.
yep. I recently did a guest post on folio.com, Dom's Wells on Folio. And the goal of good marketing is to bring in more market. Like, the goal of good marketing is not to build links. Like, links
Right.
are the side effect. And that's what we're looking for in a good domain, like the side effects of someone's good marketing.
Yeah, 100%. I think marketers who are smart about backlinking, they'll actually like build a lot more backlinks than your typical SEO is just thinking about like what's the perfect outreach email. My favorite example, I forget, I think they worked with an agency on this. So this is not exactly G rated, but they got put into all of the business websites and stuff like Forbes naturally. So I feel like I can say it, but it was Pornhub. They did this campaign a few years ago that was called Got Wood. And basically, I think it's like every 30 seconds of porn you watch, something like that, they'd plant a tree. And they had a whole landing page for it. Nothing was like R rated. It was a completely G rated landing page, very family friendly on their domain. But they ended up building just thousands and thousands of these high links. Like CNN was posting, like, you want to save the earth, watch some porn, like backlinking to them. So it's just like this brilliant PR campaign, and like you're never going to be able to repeat that with your typical SEO campaign, like your typical outreach email campaign, right? I like that mentality. Is there anything outside of branded referring domains that you're looking for when it comes to these domains? You mentioned historical like spam attacks and stuff like that. Like for the novice, how would they even know? Like, what does that look like?
Well, there are a couple of tools. One of them is majestic.com that still, kind of preserves the historical backlinks. You could, see them, how they occurred in time, and if there are any spammy anchors that no longer exist, but they were there like 3 years ago. Like, you get access to that. But that's part of our guarantee. Like, part of our offer of what our pitch, so to speak, is that we have this guarantee that there is no link spam, no anchor text spam. We check for all that. And as a matter of fact, obviously, we have our margins, we're a premium marketplace, but you buy knowing that you're buying a domain that hasn't been abused. Sort of like when investors go to Empire Flippers, they know that your team has done the due diligence. And now it's just
Well,
basically
don't
making
assume
this.
like that, Alex.
Yeah,
Kidding.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so in a way, it's all about trust. Yeah, obviously, and plus, even the landing page. Maybe you've noticed the landing page that we've built for individual domains. This landing page contained all the info. So, former domain description, historical screenshots. We show the best links the domain have, the SEO metrics. The backlink profile. So it's all there in a way. But let's say the biggest clients that we have, they simply do not check. That's because they've been a while, they trust us, and they do not want to be bothered. They spot a good domain, they see that it's powerful enough and relevant to whatever they have in mind, and they just go for it. I've rarely seen any like super successful you know members among Odys, especially with premium age domain, that would take months, to perform due diligence on a domain, because they know that sometimes you just have to avoid procrastination and just go for it. And that's the brand that we want to build. One of the goals is to be perceived as the marketplace where all domains have passed the due diligence. So now you're simply looking at great names, and maybe some great names with impossible to get links, because there are some sites that you simply cannot get links from.
Yeah. Well, you said that reminds me of that old saying, money loves speed. But I feel like trust is the gas pedal for that allows the speed. And that's
Sure.
a similar thing with us. Like people buy businesses from us or sell businesses with us because of that trust, right? And our commission's higher than some other people, but like I've had people who went with the competitor that has a much lower commission and they never even got a deal done. So like, is 7% of nothing better than 15% of something? That kind of argument, right? So much of it's built on trust, especially in this industry where there's a lot of smoke and mirrors around everything that people tend to do. So I like that. And it saves so much time if you have a trusted partner. Like you can just like go. Like we have people that they'll leave money as credit on file with us just so when they see a domain pop up, they can instantly buy it. Like we had, I think we had a one business. It's like 150K. It's not like giant, but it was just a reasonable amount of capital to leave with someone, and they just like bought it within like 10 minutes of looking at it because they trusted our vetting process. Not saying that people should go and do that, but this person was a very experienced SEO and like they knew what they were doing, right? But that trust allows that speed of acquisition, speed of growth, all that kind of stuff. And you guys are kind of doing that in the domain space, which I think is cool. I wanted to ask you about this metric on your listing pages, which is kind of goes into like what kind of typical ROI can an SEO expect when they're buying a domain from you. But I've noticed that these impossible links, maybe they are the impossible links, maybe they're not, but you'll say something along the lines like, this much SEO backlink work went into creating it, saving you like 5 years or whatever, in terms of like, if you went to go do this yourself. How do you get those kind of metrics? Like, how are you basing that, like, that this work would have taken you like 5 years to recreate? Like, how are you looking at that?
Yeah. So in the current marketplace, we still have the old Odys value formula. And that would be, for instance, you're looking at a 10 years old domain that has 200 unique referring domain names, among which, the first 20, 30 are actually high authority links, like from sites like The Guardian, BBC, Forbes, Inc.com, so forth and so on. So we have this formula where we actually calculate, if you were to buy this domain 10 years ago and keep it for 10 years, you'd have to spend, let's say, $200 on renewal fees, or 150, depending on the rate. Now, if you were to build 600 unique links from, whatever whatever link building method you prefer, you'd have to spend an average of, let's say, I don't know, depending on that. So a minimum would be like 200 for a permanent guest post. So you'd be looking around 30 grand just for these links. Now, in some of the cases, we'd also look at those high authority links. And for instance, we'd check the marketplace for what's available, and we'll estimate that a link on Inc.com, for instance, would be at least $5,000 to get. And we would summarize that and would say buying these domains would save at least 10 years of your life and an average of $30,000 on links. So that's a pretty cool way to put it, because at the end of the day, that's really what it is. So it will save you all this time. And if you reverse engineer that, now you can focus on growing the business and on content. But getting back to your ROI question, so it's a matter of experience. The domain, just like buying a business, and so you can buy a business from Empire Flippers, and if you know your quick wins, if you know how to optimize, if you know how to take it to the next level, it can be like really profitable. Like you can flip it, you can further grow it and flip it 1 year later through the same brokerage. But you can also kill the business if you have no idea what you're doing. You can start a very toxic link building campaign, and if the site is just powered by traffic from Google, you can simply kill the site. And the same with edge domains. Like you can buy an edge domain if you understand SEO, if you understand content, if you understand niche, like topical relevancy, topical cluster, you can get results as fast as within weeks. In some cases, we end up with buyers that aren't getting any results in months, in years. That's because they haven't even launched a site. So the ROI
The
really,
classic SEO move.
the ROI really depends on your experience, your speed, how fast are you launching the site. We
Yeah.
have members that are able to crank a website in 24 hours. I'm not saying like full blown, but at least some content on it. And it already got indexed and it's picking some rankings, within a week, while other, buy the domain and take 6 months just for the content plan. And then something happens and they, again delay it. So ROI really depends on the experience, first of all. In terms of like financial ROI, I'd say, well, think about this way. The price of the domain, like the average price of a domain in our marketplace is around $3,000. And then let's assume at least 100,000 words of content structured in topic cluster. that should be enough to start generating, at least $1,000 a month if you know how to optimize your content. Now, a website making at least $1,000 a month can sell for at least, I don't know, you tell me, 30
Yeah, around
30 smartphones.
35,000, somewhere around there.
That's your ROI. So, and what else in between, the posting account, whatever your case. So if you know your thing, the ROI is huge. It's just amazing. If you would ask me like, what else can I buy with my money? I'd probably buy niche sites these days. I'd invest my money in
Well,
niche
I'll have
sites.
my sales team call you after this call, Alex. After this podcast.
Yeah,
Hey, great
that's
to be
part.
ready.
That's part of your network is your net worth, obviously. You spot opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you're talking about like the time shortcut. Like when people buy businesses from us, I say you're skipping the line by between 24 to maybe upwards to 50 months of work by just buying
Yes,
what is already built, right? But just because you skip the line doesn't mean there isn't still cliffs, pitfalls, and landmines you can step on, right? Like it's up to you to keep that dance going. Like you have to have the vision, you have to have the knowledge, you have to have the skills, or get lucky, which has happened before. So I always tell people like you should be conservative when you buy a business. Be willing to only invest in what you're willing to lose. And I like ODOIS because it allows people who like, okay, I want to buy a business. I understand the concept of I should buy something that already has traction because going from 0 to 1 is like the hardest, right? Versus like 1 to 5 is often significantly easier versus the startup. But you can go in and take your capital that maybe it was very limited and use something like ODOS to buy an expired domain to at least get like your ground skill sets. I mean, you said the average domain is about what, $3,000, right? I know you guys have some that are more expensive, but that is a lot cheaper to learn the skills than buying like a $300,000 business for me,
that's
right? So like, I like to give people like the margin of error. Like you should give yourself the room for failure because that's often where wisdom is learned with this stuff. Let's talk about some of the common mistakes people make. So, I believe I already know a little bit what you're saying. So, the common mistakes when people buy a domain is going to be primarily not catching like spammy stuff that is hitting the domain, I would assume. But what else are common mistakes buyers make with domains?
So if you were to source domains on your own or buy for someone's, let's say Facebook groups, unknown sellers, your own attempt to source them via auctions or just any other source on the web. So merely you just stumble upon a domain that you like and is listed for sale. Obviously, all the historical records, use the link tools, Ahrefs, Majestic, Moz, whatever, SEMrush, use all these links to try and spot, the bad stuff. Obviously, it takes experience and it takes an eye to spot them. Like my team would be able to, it would take 10 minutes to tell that a domain is good or bad in terms of link spam. Someone might take 3 days, to try and
Yeah.
figure out why a link is spammy because you're dealing with common spam and it's not
If they're
necessarily
only using something like Ahrefs, they may not even see the PBNs that hide the
exactly.
Href from the Ahrefs bots, right?
Exactly.
So,
And those might be hidden, using HD access or some other sophisticated cloaking technique. Anyway, but most importantly, everyone gets burned with trademarks. And there are so many trademark domains being sold. Like even GoDaddy sells them, but they're monetizing their inventory. Like they're not using the trademark. They're merely monetizing an expiring inventory, which they have the right to do. But when you're buying a domain, you don't have the right to use it if it's someone else's trademark. Even
mm,
worse, if you buy a trademark domain, and you end up building content that's relevant to the former trademark, now you're in trouble. Now you're not only, exposed to some DMCA, that they can submit to Google, you're also exposed, to some serious threats from their legal team. That's because you're basically trying to, fake their company, fake their brand. So it really depends how these solicitors or lawyers will look at what you're trying to do. So that's why trademarks, I'd say, are the most important aspect. Traditional domainers, those who just have bought and sold names for a very long time, are aware of trademark. SEOs, unfortunately, aren't, especially those who just buy domains for links. So that's
right.
why we thought raising awareness of trademark via marketplace that guarantees that none of these domains are trademarked is a good thing to do. I've seen really successful sites like they bought strong domains and they would get ranked within weeks, and then within a month they would, really, really, move the needle with these domains, and then end up, with a legal threat from someone's lawyer saying take the website off, like this is our domain. Or in some cases they don't even need the domain, that because they have rebranded to a shorter name, but the domain in the old domain the name of the old domain is still a trademark, it's an active one, and you haven't checked. Well, you don't have the right to use it. You can own it, but you don't have the right to use it. So the trademarks with domains are tricky. That's why I say that's one of the biggest no-nos. Check for trademarks. Now, there are multiple sources to check for trademark, like the US, trademark and patent agency would be one of the places to check. There is also like a big, I believe it's WIPO.int international. That's one of the websites. It's a database, and it pulls the data from all national patent and trademark archives into one place, regardless of the country. So it's really easy to check there, but it still requires some back and forth, especially when dealing with partial trademarks. That is often subject to someone who understands domain trademarks. So we have a lawyer in our team. We have a lawyer that often for risky cases, she would write her own comments and she'd say, look, better stay away, better not accept this domain. You're exposing yourself to this and that. So sometimes there is, plenty to do with trademarks. And oftentimes we simply do not accept some really great domains from an SEO point of view, like with real great links, that because the name is risky. And obviously it would make a great name, but you don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I could totally see my SEO friends falling into the trademark trap and just never even considering it. Because, like you said, they're only interested in the backlinks, but there's this whole other business ecosystem that this domain could be involved in that you have no idea if you're not doing the research on. So I think that is important to bring awareness on for sure. You guys have a very interesting program that I was looking at inside of the marketplace with my account that you guys gave me that I thought was interesting. I might get this wrong, but basically you guys $500, and that's
Yeah.
like kind of a down payment, and then you guys will go and find the style domain that I'm looking for that someone wants. Talk to me a little bit about how that works. How do you go and procure that, and why would someone want to use that?
First of all, we've bumped the price to $1,000. The
Oh, there
demand is
you
just
go.
huge. The demand is huge,
I
and for
bet.
someone who really needs a very specific domain, it makes no difference. First of all, it's a deposit; it's fully refundable. So how it works? It's, let's say you get accepted to the marketplace, and you're looking for a guitar domain, like guitar domain, coffee machines domain. These are the same niches that make great content site that end up being sold on your platform, right?
For sure.
So the demand for these names is huge, and more often than not, you won't find any domains in the coffee niche, in the guitar niche, let's say, cannabis, whatever, it's trendy right now, right? And would make, high ticket commissions like expensive guitars, for example. Well, they earn pretty decent. I mean, if you're promoting them as an affiliate. So you'd look through the marketplace and you won't find any guitar domain. And then you reach out to us and can you help me find one? And yes, we can. And in fact, sometimes we even have inventory, but it's the pre marketplace inventory. That's because while we're publishing domains to the marketplace, we get lots of inquiries and lots of inventory gets sold before it even reaches the marketplace. I'm sure that you have maybe sometimes similar deals where someone would send you funds and say, "Look, Greg, if you can find me a guitar site that matches to these requirements, don't publish it. I'll buy it right away." And this is what we do. Obviously, the deposit that we charge is meant to be some sort of commitment, and when we find a domain that you like, let's say $3,000, and you already have deposited a grand, now you only have to pay the difference. But this gives you access to pre marketplace inventory. Sometimes we'd even reach out to certain groups within our community and ask, like, does anyone here has a great guitar domain for Greg? Like, he's been looking for one. Let us know. We have a buyer. Like, he's really in a hurry. He needs that domain. Usually, those placing, these RAD or requested domain orders are those who really want to, maybe they have some investor money, they just really want to start a website really quick so they don't have time to wait. So, you know, we look at sources beyond the marketplace, that being pre-marketplace inventory that's pending to be published but hasn't yet gone live, that's
Hmm.
reaching out to members within our community that we know have lots of inventory as well, but might not have the chance to publish it to our marketplace. And we also look for sources beyond Odys. There are multiple other sources. Sometimes we check there as well. So that's the benefit. The second main benefit is that we will privately reach out to you every single time there is a match. So the way it works, you place this deposit, and then we will have someone from our team send you an email or ping you on LinkedIn or on Skype or even call you and say, Greg, we found this domain. This is the former domain XYZ. These are the metrics. It was mentioned on New York Times and Inc.com and Forbes. This is the price. Check it out. And all you have to do is say yes, no, or ask any questions that you may have. And if yes, then we move forward with the transaction. If no, we just send you another one as soon as we get it. And we've realized that most of our members are, they're pretty entrepreneurial, meaning they don't have a lot of time, to go through listings, to go to the marketplace. So
Right.
they'd rather have a dedicated account manager who tell them the very moment that something, pops up as inventory within the marketplace. So that's something that we've realized. And due to the huge demand, we just last month we've bumped the price. Too many orders. I mean, we simply can't cope with how many requests we get.
Oh, that's a good sign that you're doing something right. Because I thought that was a really cool service that you guys are offering, and apparently, I am once again my own target market. And they thought the same, so that's great. I want to lean on one last question before we move into the rapid fire section here. So, with your network of these other internet marketers, SEO people that just have this ADHD list of domains that they're not using, what's the process look like on the reverse side when they're selling you guys the domain? Like, what does that process entail?
So selling domains is pretty easy. I mean, submitting the domains for review is relatively easy. You go to sell.odys.global and you submit your list of domains. Now, it will only take, a couple hours to get 99.9% of them rejected.
Right. Yeah. Submission's
The
easy. Approval is not.
submission is easy, like getting is difficult. I believe that's one of the things that makes our inventory attractive in a way. But obviously, let's say that you've submitted 10 and one got approved. Now, if you have like a selling price in mind, we'll just ask for the selling price. If no, we'll evaluate your domain and recommend one. If you have a selling price in mind but it's like ridiculous, we'll recommend something that will increase the chance of the domain selling. And then we'll onboard you, we'll list the domain for review, we'll create a nice logo, we'll contribute to the domain description, and then it will go live to the marketplace and it will go to our weekly listings. We have like this straight to your inbox weekly email where we showcase all the newly added inventory. It will shout out to our Discord group. We'll just promote it anywhere we can, from our members to pay per click, and do our best to sell the domain for you.
Excellent. So you guys aren't buying the domains yourself then. You're truly like representing sellers in most cases, or do you also have your own inventory that's, like
We
actually
have our
owned
own
by
inventory.
ODYS? You do.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have our own inventory, which is around 80% of all inventory right now. But since launching like Sell Your Domains as a program, to accept domains from third parties, just like you or anyone else in the community, we've started
Mhm.
diversifying. So in some of the cases, the marketplace is barely a marketplace where you list it for sale. And if it sells, we make a commission and we pay you the rest.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we're coming up on an hour here, so I want to move into the rapid fire questions. Are you ready, my
Sure.
friend?
Yeah, absolutely. Always
All
ready.
right. Let the pressure build up here. These are some heart pounding questions. You'll be fine. All right. Let's do the rapid fire section. So, over your 15 years of experience and now moving to the modern era of domain investing, what, in your opinion, is the best hidden growth opportunities for domain investing today?
Age domains.
Well, perfect. Do you think the best hidden growth opportunity is like building the site on top or just kind of holding the domain yourself?
I would say both. Like
Both.
if you had like money to invest, I'd say buy domains to build sites, buy domains, to resell later. Because we've seen like when I've started investing in domain 15 years ago, the same domain that we're paying thousands this day to buy would go for, $50 to $100. And I expect them to go up in price in time. Why? Because as people will become more educated on their real value, the fact that a Forbes link or a New York Times link would be, impossible to evaluate in terms of how much you'd have to pay for it. And this also adds value, like even auctions, domains are just skyrocketing in price. So I believe buying, holding, and later reselling or selling or flipping is also a viable strategy. Even if your main thing is like building sites, spotting good domain opportunities and just, in fact, you can go to Odys. If there is like a domain like marketing.com, for instance, that you've seen and you like, you can buy it and you can immediately resell. You say, well, that's a steal. Who would sell marketing.com for $10,000? And you buy it and you sell it for 20, and maybe you won't be able to sell it for 10 in the next year, but you say, well, I'll hold for this for a while because I know it will sell like in a couple of years. And that's something that viable. I mean, there is no guarantees that you will sell, but if you really think that's a valuable name, and sometimes, dealing with thousands of domain, not necessarily, let's say, can predict a domain going up in value. But if you're into marketing and you've spotted a really nice name and you know what you're talking about and you can clearly see like this is way undervalued, then there's an opportunity for you as a domain investor.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Marketing.com, by the way, I think it was recently valued at, I think, 7 million. I heard about it a while ago. But yeah, that would be a hell of a deal to buy it for 10 grand. What tools or resources would you recommend outside of just Otis's marketplace, which people should definitely go to anyways? But what other tools and resources would you recommend for people to find domains to acquire?
Well, it really depends on the business model. Like if you're into buying and selling domains, you need all the tools. Like we have Ahrefs, Majestic, SEMrush, Moz. We use all the tools that most of the people like from basic, google.com. We consider that as a tool. We check if the domain is indexed. We have how many pages it has indexed and all sorts of tools. But it really depends on the business model. Most of our members don't even have an Ahrefs account. They just trust us. They don't think they have to pay for one. So we kind of do all the due diligence. But at the end of the day, it really depends on the business model. Like I really don't know how you'd personalize your experience with domains, but if you're planning to buy a domain yourself, then obviously, you go to places like GoDaddy Auctions, for instance, or you go to a marketplace like Dan.com, you pick a name and you do all the due diligence. You go to, Ahrefs.com and all the other tools that are, link data tools basically, and then you go to archive.org, which is free and it takes, ages to load, and that's also something that we're kind of helping because we fetch those screenshots in advance so you don't have to waste time waiting for those snapshots to load. And then you check everywhere, you check the trademarks. So all these sites are basically tools in a way. All these tools are means to get the most out of the domain and figure out if it's worth of investing or not.
So my final question for you is, what has been your funniest moment since you started working online with domain investing, internet entrepreneurship, just in general? What's been your funniest moment?
Yeah, the funniest moment was repurposing a website that used to be like a nudist club. It was mystic something into a tarot or card reading or one of those angel reading sites, and it skyrocketed beyond our expectations. And it was really mystic because the domain, first of all, the domain had this mystic in it, and we couldn't figure out like what to do with it because it kept growing, but we couldn't sell it because the name wasn't the best, obviously, and the repurposing we wouldn't know how much it would last until something happens to it. So we ended up just riding that wave of earnings. It lasted for a couple of years, and then I don't know what happened to the domain, but that was pretty funny because most of the time you need relevancy. But in that particular case, Google kind of really liked the chemistry between a former nudist club
These nudists
and
reading tarot cards, it makes total sense to
yeah,
Google's
tarot cards.
robots. I love it. That's pretty funny. Well, awesome, man. I really enjoyed this podcast. For everyone out there that wants to connect with you or check out the Odys.global marketplace, where should people go to connect with you guys?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm basically on Twitter. They can reach out, just check for Odys or Global, then or Alex Drew. They will find me. They can connect. I accept most friend requests unless you're trying to sell me guest posts. What else? Reach out to me via our support system at Odys.global. Someone from the support team will just connect me to you. If you want to hop on a call, no worries. I'm open to that.
And you guys, you mentioned you have a Discord community as well. Is that just for customers, or can anyone join that?
Everyone who's, let's say, so let me just go through everyone who gets in. So veterans who've bought from us from the very early days, like 10 years ago, then everyone within our network, all the customers, everyone who we got the chance to interact with, hop on a call with, we'll send you an invite now that we're doing this. So everyone who's actually got the chance to interact with goes to the community. That's because our goal is to build and to tap into the, your network is your network effect. And basically at the end of the day we want to just keep sharing knowledge bombs and helping each other and just build this brotherhood because success is rarely a lone wolf play. You really have to know people and you really have to help each other, and not just because of reciprocity, but it's just awesome being part of community, and this is what we're trying to build.
I love it. So when I accept the invitation, I will be the only person selling guest posts in there from the sounds of it. So this blue ocean
Yeah.
market for me. No, that's awesome. I like that. I think keeping the community tight like that makes a lot of sense. We'll include all those links in the show notes down below for anyone out in the audience that wants to connect with Alex. Like I said, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing over there. So I definitely recommend our audience go check it out if this is something that like piqued your interest. Because I think it can for sure shortcut your SEO success if that's the way you want to go. But Alex, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers. It was a pleasure, really.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace, or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.